Hello everyone! Since Thanksgiving is fast approaching, I've chosen for this flip lesson to learn about the first Thanksgiving. Let's begin with the objective of this lesson. Once you've completed this lesson, you'll be able to determine the central ideas and provide a summary of the first Thanksgiving using evidence to support your analysis. But before we begin, make sure to prep before you continue with the lesson. Have the handout for this lesson out so you can complete it as you go along. Be sure to pause the lesson as many times as you need. And now that you're ready to go, let's start the lesson. Some key facts about the Pilgrims. They came to America to avoid religious rules imposed by England. They were Calvinist Protestants following the teachings of John Calvin on how to worship God. The Pilgrims had asked the King of England to allow them to form their own church, but the king denied the Pilgrims' request. They decided then to sail out across the Atlantic Ocean to reach North America. They sailed on a ship named the Mayflower. On December 11, 1620, the first Pilgrims, or Puritans as we first know them, landed at Plymouth Rock. The Wampanoag Indians were the people who told the Pilgrims how to get the land ready for planting. The Pilgrim leader, Governor William Bradford, organized the first Thanksgiving feast in the year 1621 in Massachusetts. What was the Mayflower? The Mayflower was the ship that transported mostly English Puritans and separatists, collectively known today as the Pilgrims, from Plymouth, England to the New World. Let's take the journey.
Mayflower leaves England for North America. The ship's master, Christopher Jones, is an experienced skipper, but the 2-month journey will not be a smooth one.
A crew of 30 men work the decks, adjusting the sails. While below deck, the Pilgrims rarely get a breath of fresh air, except to empty their chamber pots. Halfway to the New World, a violent autumn storm strikes. The ship begins to leak, and the main beam cracks.
Watch out!
A passenger is thrown overboard, but catches a rope and is rescued.
Is everyone all right?
On the verge of turning back, the crew repairs the beam with a large iron screw the Pilgrims had brought from Holland. Leaks are plugged with caulk and a mallet.
The storm passes, but the ship has been blown off course. She is now far north of Virginia, where the Pilgrims intend to settle.
The crew stops in Newfoundland for fresh water and supplies before sailing south again for Virginia. But the perilous waters around New England force a change of plans.
They land at Cape Cod, Massachusetts on November 11th, after 65 days at sea.
Finally, the new
By December, they will make their way to Plymouth, their new home, as winter sets in.
The Mayflower Compact. It was signed aboard ship on November 11, 1620. It was the first governing document of Plymouth Colony. It was written by the separatists, sometimes referred to as the Saints. It was in essence a contract in which the settlers consented to follow the compact's rules and regulations for the sake of order and survival. The daily life in the Plymouth Colony. The housing. When the first arrived, they would live in tents and dugouts and eventually develop more permanent houses. The laws in Plymouth Colony were made by a governor and his 7 assistants. Every March, the group would meet and make laws for the colony. These people were selected by the General Court. The General Court was made of colony members. The grand jury was the highest standing group in the colony, and they decided what to do with the criminals. The money of the colony was the British pound. Taxes were called rates, and every man for rates had to pay a bushel of Indian wheat or the equivalent in British pounds. Their clothing were usually made of linen, wool, or for the very highest class, cotton. Men wore the traditional hat, breeches, and shirts without a collar and no belt. Women usually wore an undergarment and an overgarment. Children, girls and boys aged 8 and up, usually wore a gown or dress-like garment. The Wampanoag tribe. The Wampanoag Indians were the tribe that met and befriended the Pilgrims who landed at Plymouth in 1620. They showed the Pilgrims how to care for the land and obtain food for crops, for example corn, so they could survive the winter. They were invited to the first Thanksgiving feast to share the fruits of the land. The Thanksgiving feast. While the English colonists we call Pilgrims celebrated days of Thanksgiving as part of their religion, these days were days of prayer, no days of feasting. However, our national holiday really stems from the feast held in the fall of 1621 by the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag to celebrate the colony's first successful harvest. So what have we learned? The Pilgrims came to America to avoid the religious rules imposed by England. They were called Calvinist Protestants. They followed the teachings of John Calvin on how to worship God. The Pilgrims had asked the king to allow them to form their own church. However, the king denied their request. The Pilgrims then decided to sail across the Atlantic Ocean to reach North America. They sailed on a ship named the Mayflower. On December 11, 1620, the first Pilgrims, or Puritans as we first know them, landed at Plymouth Rock. The Wampanoag Indians were the people who taught the Pilgrims how to get the land ready for planting. The Pilgrim leader, Governor William Bradford, organized them the first Thanksgiving feast in the year 1621 in Massachusetts. Now that you have finished the lesson, make sure you've completed all the answers in your handout. Be sure to go back to the lesson if need be, watch the video, and be prepared to come into class to complete the in-class activity we will be carrying out next. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone!